News Radio 1120 KPNW. Good morning. November 4th, 8:43. All right, final guest of the morning. Happy to have on Mattias Gugel this morning. He is the Director of State External Affairs at the National Taxpayers Union. Yikes. What the title, quite the title, I will say that is. And we're going to be talking about ballot measure 118, which would give a good old slap on the hand to businesses here in Oregon and would end up rising prices for all Oregonians. And Mattias on the phone with us now. Mr. Gugel, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
We love your name, by the way. We've been impressed by your name all morning. So excited to talk with you. Yeah,
it's a good one. I was lucked out on that.
Yeah, no kidding. Anyway, okay. So tell us a little bit about the Taxpayers Union.
So National Taxpayers Union is a great group that we have. We are serving taxpayers. So you might not know it, but we're out there representing you in state capitals and in D.C., trying to make sure that your taxes stay low.
Okay. Can you do a better job here in Oregon?
We'd love to do that, but that's really where ultimately voters, it's going to be up to you on especially an issue like ballot measure 118. You've got a Trojan horse tax issue coming up for you right now. This is a measure that would approve a huge new tax for businesses in Oregon, which they're saying will give you a free $1,600 check for every resident. But it's important to know this is not free money. Voters need to be aware this is only going to drive up their own costs for rent, for groceries, for utilities. This is a new tax on them, and they need to vote no on Measure 118.
Okay, so, we've heard it's going to raise taxes on, or it's going to raise prices for all Oregonians. Has anybody been able to quantify, how much more it's going to cost the average Oregonian a year compared to that $1,600 that they're just going to be given?
Yeah, so let me put this in maybe a different way to talk to you guys about this.
Yeah.
So a typical Oregon grocery store operates with a net profit margin of just more than 1%. So say you go to the grocery store, you pay $100. They are only making about $1 on that $100. This new tax under Measure 118 would be $3 of a tax for that one grocery bill. You multiply that times, I'm sure your grocery bill is more than that every time you hit the store, and every week, that is all money that you're going to ultimately have to pay when you're buying bread, when you're buying butter, milk, whatever that might be, that you yourself is paying for this $1,600 giveaway.
Okay, so for every $100 you spend, it's going to cost you $3 more.
Yeah, like the grocery store, exactly.
Okay.
And I get it. Like, inflation is hard. We're all suffering under the Biden-Harris inflation that's happening right now. This is only going to make the situation worse. This isn't going to really help alleviate anything for middle and low-income earners. And this is anything but fair. It's the same solution that created the inflation is being pitched as the solution here, and it's anything but. It's a trap that voters need to be wary of and say no to.
Okay, so the expectation is obviously that grocery store, which, the way that this tax is applied to them is, based on their sales, and that's gross as opposed to net. So the only way for them to make money is essentially to raise the costs.
Exactly. The left loves to talk about fairness, but Measure 118 is really anything but fair. That is going to go to a cost that really hits your pocketbook, and not only just at the grocery store in increased costs, but you might see it in lost wages because companies aren't going to be able to afford being in Oregon anymore. They might move away. And you're going to see a state like Oregon that's struggling to compete in the market for jobs and for innovators.
Okay. Have you seen I mean, you're behind the scenes. Have you seen any polling on this to show, whether this thing really has any support whatsoever? Because, I mean, it has been pretty much across the board. Oregon's political leaders, doesn't make any difference what the letter is behind their name. Even the governor has come out against it. Legislators on both sides of the aisle have come out against it. The unions have come out against it. Has there been any polling to show how voters feel about it?
Well, ultimately, we're going to see that tomorrow when we see the voters down there. I'm sure that while they see that they're suffering right now, they know this is a trap and that there are better solutions out there. If Oregon's policymakers, like those that are opposing Measure 118, really want to help Oregonians, really what they need to first do is vote no on Measure 118 and then focus on policies that are going to save you money in your taxes so that when you're paying your income tax, when you're paying your property taxes, you get to keep that money so that you can afford the groceries, the rent, the utilities for your family. They need to make sure that we're not just getting a sugar high, which is what this policy ultimately is. It's a one-time sugar high that would eventually leave you with that feel of a crash. But they need to do something that's going to be a healthy diet for all Oregonians so that they can help their families succeed.
Well, as I said earlier, you need to get on them for that because we don't see a lot of that coming down the pike as Oregonians. I don't think that there is a tax that the legislature has seen that they don't like at this point, depending on what it is they want to spend it on.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important that our voters go out there and not only on Measure 118, but on all sorts of races across your ballot, that you're voting for people who are going to make sure that your family is at the forefront and that you can be able to afford life in a very difficult time in America right now. It's getting those policymakers in place that then someone like me gets to go and talk to them at the state capitol and say, hey, here is the reason why your economy is going to succeed when you lower your individual income rate, when you lower your property taxes, when you deregulate the economy so that businesses can thrive and succeed in Oregon.
Has there ever been, that you know of, in the United States, I mean, we do know there have been corporate activities taxes like this one, but they have been quite a bit smaller. Do you know of any that has been a full 3%?
No, this one is definitely an outlier. A full 3% is a massive hit to businesses and ultimately a hit to Oregon families. It's where we've really seen that these kinds of programs just grow in addition. So once this government program starts, once you see this 3% tax that's giving out this allegedly free money, you're going to continue to need to pay out that free money to families because handouts rarely go away. But you're still going to need to keep paying for it, which is really why this is a Trojan horse that you need to be aware of because it's only going to grow going forward.
All right. We appreciate your time. Thank you, Mattias.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
All right, you take care. It is Mattias Gugel on the wake-up call from the Taxpayers Union joining us.
There's no way that passes. I mean, knock on wood, but there's no way. Please. I know we live in Oregon.
Not only do you live in Oregon, but you have Portland and you have Eugene and you have Corvallis. And between those three, I can see this winning. I mean, everybody says, "Oh, you're crazy." No. This is Oregon. And I mean, you start taking a look at social media and they're all like, screw those guys, screw the big stores, screw the, billionaire, blah, 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 blah. They make $25 million a year. How much do they need? With absolutely no sense of how the tax works.
Right.
They just see it as a tax.
Well, they
They
see
don't- they
that
don't
and
see-
they see free money in their pockets.
They don't. Well, there's that. They don't see it for what it is. This is a tax on the entire gross, not a net. They see $25 million and they just figure, like they printed it out of nowhere. Like there's no expenses behind that. Like anybody that makes, or any company that makes $25 million a year, they're making 80%, 90% profit, which is not the case. So, yeah, can I see this passing? Yeah, absolutely.
The only thing that makes me hopeful is a lot of the houses I see around town with Harris signs in it. There's some of them with no 118 signs in them. So that helps out. You want to take a phone call real quick before we leave today?
Sure.
Hi, KPNW. You are on the air.
What's wrong? What's going on?
Well, I was thinking on this tax. So if it's 3% of gross, and as a retailer you add 3% to the cost of your goods, doesn't that compound onto your 3% gross at the end, or your gross at the end? Does that make sense? You there?
Yeah, I'm here. No, I'm not seeing what you're saying. Well, okay. So if they charge another 3%, then that is going to take a chunk out of that money, and so on, is what you're saying.
So if it's based on your gross sales, and you're adding 3% to everything you sell, then you're paying. It's almost like double taxes, isn't it? Aren't you paying? I mean, if you're showing a 3% ad to selling a candy bar, and you sell, are you able to deduct that tax at the end of the year?
No, there's no deduction for it.
So without the 3%, let's say you sold $100 in candy bars.
Yeah.
And then you would pay 3% on the $100.
Right.
But you add the 3%, then you're paying the tax on the 3% you added plus your gross sales.
Correct.
Yeah. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah, you're, yeah, I get what you're saying.
So,
yeah, you're paying on all.
It's a lose-lose.
Well, and the other thing is it's a compounding tax, because everything that has to do with the chain, as long as that company makes more than $25 million a year, they're getting taxed too, and they're just passing it down the line. The person that ultimately pays for the bulk majority of it is the end user, which, if we're talking groceries, is the guy that buys them. Look at Tillamook Cheese. Tillamook Cheese, they're getting taxed, so they're passing that along to the grocery store.
Yeah, but they don't really get a chance to pass it on because they've added that.
Well, I get what you're saying, but they're still going to increase their price. So that means the whole, at the wholesale level, the grocery store is paying more for it. Plus, they're getting taxed, and it all ends up rolling downhill. And that's the end user, me, when I go to buy a 2-pound block of the New York aged white cheddar. Yes, I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, we're out of time. We got to go. Thank you for calling this morning. We appreciate it.
You bet.
All right. Take care. Okay, we're out. Tomorrow's election day. Woohoo! So go out there and do your thing. Somebody writes, I suggest unionizing the black market pot workers to see if that works. It'll level the field with legal pot shops, and don't criminal workers deserve a living wage as well? Writes Dan. Thanks. We're out.
Bye.